2 years ago, Tim Hansen made a review video about Voyage of Despair, and I have some thoughts. Don't get me wrong, I don't think Voyage of Despair is this unsung hero of the Zombies franchise, but I think it's one of the most underrated Zombies maps that we have to date. So let's see what Tim has to say about it.
It just so happens that my opinion of Voyage of Despair in the majority of the communities is that this map sort of sucks. And this isn't just me talking out of my ass. I've ran several polls in the past. Voyage of Despair never tends to miss the bottom 5. Voyage of Despair is the least favorite map in the least favorite Treyarch Zombies game.
So this first point that Tim sort of brings up, and he uses quite a bit in his videos, is that he polled his YouTube audience. Now, it doesn't take a genius to understand that your YouTube polls are gonna be biased. My YouTube polls are gonna be biased. It's a very unscientific and inaccurate way of obtaining relevant information. Even still, I've said it a million times and I will die on this hill. Just because something isn't popular doesn't make it bad, and just because something is popular doesn't make it good. Life is more nuanced and complicated than that.
Voyage of Despair, in my opinion, is the lowest of the low. That doesn't mean that there aren't redeeming qualities. There are some great things about Voyage of Despair, but generally, I thought this map went under the radar, and rightfully so. I thought Voyage of Despair was just an underwhelming experience, and at launch, compared to the other 3 maps, just did not hold up as well as we thought.
Now, this is a part of Tim's videos that frustrates me as a content creator. He'll make these broad statements without giving specific examples or having consistent logic, which we'll dive into further into the video. But you can see that here when he mentions that Voyage of Despair is the lowest of the low, how it flew under the radar, and it's just an underwhelming experience. None of that is specific whatsoever. Again, content creator donuts coming in here. We are 2 minutes into this 10-minute video, and there's been no specifics yet.
You have an interesting, fresh new story on the Titanic. What could go wrong? Well, pretty much everything went wrong. The story, unfortunately, wasn't very captivating, which is painful, and I felt as though a story revolving around the ship sinking, saving it from sinking, could have been a very amazing Easter egg. I mean, imagine playing a zombies map on the Titanic where you stop the ship from sinking. That would have been incredible, but unfortunately, we were given something very different. Instead, it's a mission to find Scarlett's father, some mysterious dude that has no character development, no reason to care about him. The origins of the cult, the origins of the Sentinel artifact aren't made very clear and don't really drag much attention to it. And what we end up doing for the Easter egg is defeating a giant eyeball?
Do you see how non-specific these statements are? He never explained himself in that segment whatsoever. He asks, what if we had a zombie map where you stop the Titanic from sinking? That would be incredible. But why would that be incredible? And the important question is, why would that be better than what we got? Instead of arguments, he kind of just states things in a disapproving tone. Imagine if I described Der Eisendrache like he described Voyage. So Der Eisendrache takes place in a castle map, but instead of defending the castle from an army, you know, like you do with castles, we end up defeating a giant keeper? It's a bad argument. There is no point. It's just a statement. Why do you not like what happened in Voyage, and why would you like saving the Titanic better? Now, I'm not saying that Voyage has an amazing story or anything, but if we were to save the Titanic from sinking, what in the world does that have to do with our chaos story? How does that make sense? How is it relevant? I want some more explanations. I want more conversations and discussion.
Let's talk about the atmosphere of this map. Though realistic, somehow felt, what's the word? Dull? But ultimately, the entirety of the map just feels barren. Again, it feels like the Titanic, it feels realistic, but in the same breath, it somehow lacks that intangible zombies feel. On a scary map like Nocturne Toten, for example, it's barren as well. And Nocturne Toten has the inexplicable zombies feel to it, where you feel genuinely scared. It's sort of bone-chilling. But Voyage of Despair, again, it's intangible, it's very hard to put into words, but this map just lacks that feeling.
I want to preface this point by saying this could be a donuts problem, but as a reviewer, which Tim certainly is, saying something doesn't feel right or has an intangible or inexplicable quality just isn't good enough. It's another argument that you can't argue. Take, for example, what if I did exactly what he did, but flipped the maps around? Noct just doesn't feel right. Voyage has that intangible zombies feel that Noct doesn't. It's illogical. If you can't explain yourself, then maybe you should try to investigate further, which is exactly what I pride myself on doing in this channel. I'm not saying that Tim shouldn't feel this way, but why does he feel this way? Can we explain why he feels this way? And what's the underlying cause of him feeling this way? That is a much more interesting video than just saying, it doesn't feel like zombies. But also, the atmosphere in Voyage of Despair is actually really good. In his defense, this video came out before Cold War, and after Cold War and after Vanguard Zombies, going back and just the starting sequence of Voyage of Despair.
I'm sure we just got separated, accidentally. I do not know why, but somehow we escaped being turned into monsters, like everyone else on board.
I gotta tell you, beautiful people, I almost shed a tear because that was a really bombastic, amazing intro sequence. But it's not just that. I love my favorite room is this room underneath the poop deck here. It's cold, you got the mist, and you can hear the Kraken growling, you can hear heartbeats, and you can hear whispering. That atmosphere is so good.
Speaking of rubble, my god, this map is such a clusterfuck. There is shit everywhere. The close quarterness of this map proves very difficult. On the inside of the ship, you have these very, very narrow hallways, and you have all these tables and chairs and all this shit in your way. It makes training, it makes surviving in general very difficult, and it also makes everything look sort of bad. On Voyage of Despair, you just have all of these objects in your way, and it really proves to be a hassle. I feel like the general design and the spacing just doesn't work.
This is probably one of the weirdest points that he makes in this video. He says that there's stuff everywhere and it's difficult and makes it hard to train. I feel like that's just all zombie maps before Cold War. Like, I feel like that's Treyarch's 101 on map design. Like, they have an open spot and they litter it with stuff so that it's harder to train. Am I like just making that up? I don't know. But this is also where we see kind of his inconsistent logic. Because when I think of a map that's close quarters, that's difficult, that's got rubble everywhere, including tables, which he mentioned, I think of Mob of the Dead, which he thinks is one of the best maps ever made. But yet all of his arguments could be said about Mob of the Dead. It's close quarters, it's difficult to train, and there's rubble everywhere, blocking off pathways. And look at the cafeteria, it's all tables. If you don't like clutter and things blocking zombie maps, then I would think that you would dislike a whole lot of zombie maps, because I feel like that's just all zombie maps. I don't get it, it's a weird point.
And another issue that tags along with this is that everything sort of looks the same. It's very hard to distinguish different parts of this map. And I don't mean that I don't know what side of the ship I'm on, I do, but it all sort of looks the exact same. I mean, on the inside of the ship, there are 4 levels with the grand staircase. They all sort of look identical. In both flooded areas on opposite sides of the ship, they sort of look the same as well. Every area of this map sort of feels the same. It feels indistinguishable from the next, which isn't the case for a lot of maps.
Everything looks the same on Voyage? Really? Everything looks the same? Yeah, I get it. I get it, Tim. Those decks on either end of the ship, those look exactly like that dining hall. And boy, are we in the dining hall or in the engine room. I can't tell. Is this the underwater cargo bay or the kitchen? Who knows? Again, because he doesn't really explain himself, I don't understand this point whatsoever. And let's say that, yeah, everything felt the same. Why would that be a bad thing? I feel like we've had maps that feel similarly throughout the entire map more than Voyage of Despair does. Take a map like Origins. It all feels like this huge battleground with trenches and mud everywhere. Yes, there's different areas obviously, but the majority of the map is this big battle area. And that's a positive thing about the map. It increases that sense of scale with the giant robots and everything. It's a positive thing that it feels sort of samey. So again, I don't understand this point.
Not to mention, this map is fucking enormous. To get from one side of the ship to the exact opposite, you almost have to take fast travel unless you want to walk for 5 minutes. Which is the case for a lot of maps out there, no doubt. There are many giant zombies maps, but this one in particular...
Ooh, it sounds like he might explain himself here. Let's take a listen.
Which is the case for a lot of maps out there, no doubt. There are many giant zombies maps, but this one in particular, it's just so narrow and linear. So in its totality, the design of...
But this one is just so narrow and linear. Okay, so what? Why is that a bad thing? Why would a map being so enormous and big be okay, but narrow be bad? I mean, you want to talk about an enormous map that takes 5 minutes to traverse? We were just talking about Origins, which by the way has no fast travel methods. And no, the tank doesn't count because it is not fast. The fast travels on Voyage of Despair are placed very well, and the map layout isn't even confusing. It's just a 3-lane map flipped on its side. Go check out my 101 video, you might learn yourself something. But again, this is another non-point that you can't argue because he never really says any point.
One thing I don't like about Voyage of Despair are the boss zombies, which is a Black Ops 4 issue at large. You have the Catalyst zombies, which single-handedly fucking ruin the experience for me, but you also have those giant Requise-looking dudes, as I commonly refer to them as. They're sort of a nuisance. The Blightfathers are a pain in the ass. Collectively, it's a clusterfuck. There's too many bosses to be worrying about.
Now, just in case you beautiful people thought this was a Black Ops 4 fanboy just defending Voyage of Despair, I wholeheartedly agree with him on this point. But again, he makes no point. He says the Catalists ruin the experience. He says that it's just a cluster with all of these boss zombies. So why is that a bad thing? Even with this point, he doesn't explain how having all of these bosses ruins the map in his opinion. He just says he doesn't like it and he moves on.
I just thought Voyage of Despair was at the very least, the worst Black Ops 4 map. And I am confident with this one. I don't think it's that unpopular of an opinion. Again, I've asked several people, I've ran polls. This one is the lowest of Black Ops 4.
Again, he falls back and tries to defend his opinion by saying stuff like, I don't think that's an unpopular opinion. I've ran a lot of polls, and my personal favorite, I've asked several people. Yes, the old ask the several people review strategy. Works like a charm. Said it at the beginning of the video, popularity does not equate to quality. And if this whole video sounds really harsh on Tim Hansen, please let me explain. I'm not trying to start drama, I'm not trying to start any hate or anything. Tim seems like a really chill person and I don't have anything personal against him whatsoever. But in terms of the video, this is not a first impression video. This is not like an off-the-cuff casual thoughts video. This is not a live stream or an in-person thing where he's just kind of saying how he feels about something. This video is part of a whole review series. And in my opinion, if you're gonna review a map, I personally want way more depth and detail in your review. Don't just say something is bad, explain why it's bad. Explain how it could have worked better in a different way, or explain why it does work in this situation but doesn't work in this situation. This sort of critical thinking is key when coming up with your own conclusion. If I like something, I want to investigate why I like it. I feel like so often in the zombies community, and especially during the Black Ops 4 life cycle, we saw some of these negatives and we just steamrolled Black Ops 4 into the ground. We never took the time to slow down and articulate what we were feeling and why we were feeling it. Voyage of Despair is not this hidden gem of the zombies mode, but for some reason it is just so disproportionately hated. And it's reviews like this that are so frustrating to watch. There is no articulation of nuanced points, there's no discussion or debate, it's all just shallow. This is bad, let's move on. I want more from a review series than this. If you're looking for something with a little bit more discussion and articulation, I'd highly recommend checking out this video, subscribing, and stay beautiful.